Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's that time again. I am doing my June bullet journal. I'm going to show you my cover art and how I did that. I know I'm running a little bit late. June's already started, but May was something else. So if we haven't met, I'm Viv. This is Art with Viv, and let's go to the studio. For this month's bullet journal, I went with pink flamingos. My neighbor has some of those cute little plastic pink flamingos in her yard, and I just love them. They make me smile every time I pass by her house. So I thought, I'm gonna do some pink flamingos for my bullet journal cover, and that's what I've decided on for my theme for June. Now I am starting off with just a little bit of a wet on dry and using my black mixture to get in that pattern that's on the bottom part of my flamingo's beak. I am using a Cotman Skechers box. It's just, the basic colors. It's nothing, anybody should be able to have these basic colors. So I decided I would use it because, anybody can follow along if they have a warm and a cool of all the primaries and then one or two browns. And this one actually has white, which is just gouache, but they call it Chinese white. And if you don't have white watercolor Chinese white, just use white gouache, because I did use that in my mix to make my nice pink. I got several pinks here. I got a deep coral pink. Then I went with sort of a medium pink, and I added some of that white, Chinese white or white gouache to get a really pale pink. So that's how I mixed my colors. I've also mixed up a nice dark black, and I just used brown and blue for that. If I haven't mentioned that before, I couldn't remember if I just mentioned that or not, so I wanted to make sure that you knew that was just a brown and a blue for that black color. And now I'm going to start on his head and neck. We're going to use the wet and wet technique, and I'm wetting that head and neck with clean water all over. Now it's not really soaking wet. It's not a puddle on top of the paper. It's just a nice sheen of clean water. And then I'm going to switch my brush and go back to a smaller brush and pick up some of that really dark coral color and just go around his head and make sure that I avoid his eye. His eye is more of an orangey color, so I'm just painting around that eye. And I like the wet on wet technique because, of course, the colors tend to have that nice smooth gradation. They blend together on the edges. You don't have the hard edges. They just sort of blend one into the other. And now I'm just picking up some of my lighter pink there, and I'm blending that right along the edge of that darker pink. And since the paper's wet, they just sort of blend effortlessly and smoothly without any hard edges. And I'm just taking my brush and I'm sort of making some brush strokes right along the edge to indicate that there's some feathers. And then on this back side where the sun is actually hitting his neck, it looks a little warmer to me, so I'm just adding a little bit of yellow to make more of an orangey mix. And that's what I like to think about. Where's the sun hitting it? That's going to look a little warmer. Where the sun's not hitting it, it's going to look a little paler, a little bluer or purpler. So that's what I think about. And I'm just going back around the edge to get some darker shadows in under his cheek. Now, I think right now would be a really good time to tell you about my Patreon. If you are not a member, you can become a member for as little as $3 a month. You'll get all kinds of bonus goodies for $3 a month with like coloring pages, printable art, printables from my Bujo journal and things like that. So that's just something for you to consider. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to start painting in all of the base for my feathers, and I'm making that to be that really pale pink. And I'm just going to paint all of these feathers with the base coat of this pink. And I'm just going to let you watch for a second, and I'll come back shortly. Now, as we move over to the right side, I'm remembering that the sun is hitting this side, so I'm going to blend it with just a little bit more of that orangey tone so that this side has a little bit of a warmer hue to it where the sun is hitting his feathers, and that's his wing, the top of his wing. And so I'm just blending in some of that orange. Now I am doing wet on dry, and if I haven't mentioned it, I am doing hot pressed paper. I usually do cold press, but hot press paper is really great if you want to get a lot of details in there because the paint just sits right on top of the surface of the paper. It doesn't sort of sink into the fibers as much as it would with cold pressed. So that is what I'm using. I'm getting in this warmer patch where the sun is sort of hitting his feathers, making them look a little warmer. And then I'm gonna continue on with more of the pinks until I get over to the shadow side. Now once I'm coming over here to the shadow side, it's farthest away from where that sun is hitting the flamingo. The feathers look almost white. They're really pale. They're really a lighter color. So what I've decided to do is use blue for these feathers that are in shadow. They are a cooler color, so of course I'm going with that paler blue, and I've watered it down. And so these feathers that I have over here in shadow, they're going to mainly be blue. I am going to add a little bit of pink on top of them in some areas. Let the blue and the pink mix a little bit and just continue to do that. And like I told you before, where it's warmer, I went with a little bit more of an orange tone. Where it's cooler over here on the left hand side, it's in more shadow, I went with that really pale, and it's still a warm blue. It's not even a cool blue. I went with a warm blue since the overall feel of the I was going to call it a pelican, of the flamingo is warm. And you see here how I am mixing some of that pink in with the blues, letting those blend together just right on the paper. Later on, I'll come back and I'll add some of the pink over the blue once it's dry. So you'll be able to see that blue peeking through the pink, but it really won't blend together. It is more of a visual blend. Your eye is doing the blending rather than actually blending the paint together. So now I've gotten a little bit of a darker orange here, and I'm going to go ahead and put in the shadows. When you're thinking about shadows, you really want to think about the shapes, of course, where they are, how far away they are from the sun, those things that you can think about. Of course, you want the proper shape and you want it in the proper spot, but you also want it to be, if it is a warm shadow where it's more in the sun, you'll of course want that shadow color to be a little bit warmer. Where it is a cooler shadow, like on the left hand side where the blues are, you'll want those shadows to be a little more blue or a little more purple. You'll want it to be a cooler tone. And so the way that I'm achieving this with this flamingo is by putting in the blue first, and then I'll put on a little hint of the pink over top of it. But that is my cool shadow color for this flamingo. And I am using a warm blue because, like I said, the overall feel of this flamingo is warm. So now I have went and I've added even darker, another blue into my orangey pinky mix up there, that coral mix. I added a little bit of blue and a little bit more of that deep red so that I can have darker shadow colors. I am putting those in there, and this helps separate the feathers from each other. It gives it a more realistic look. It also gives it a little bit of depth and dimension. So I'm going to let you watch me put in the shadows. Just remember, correct color, you want the correct lightness or darkness of the shadow, and of course you want to pay attention to the shapes and get them in the right place. I've gotten a lot of these shadow shapes in. I've also darkened up some of the pink feathers on his body in some areas, and that has really given it a lot of dimension, made it look a lot more realistic. Although we're not going for hyper realistic, it does give it a look of realism. We know that this is a pink flamingo. And now I'm going to start working across his body and get over here into where it starts to go into shadow. So some of these pink feathers, I'm just going to paint a little wash of this blue, this warm blue over them, and up and into the shadows between the feathers where the top feathers are casting that shadow onto the next layer of feathers. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm also using a really light touch. I don't want to reactivate that pink. That pink is completely dry, so I do not want to reactivate it. So what I'm doing is just using a really light touch and trying not to fuss with it, because if you get that reactivated, you won't get that same effect as having the glaze. The glaze makes it look more like stained glass, but if you reactivate the pink and they mix together, it muddies it up just a little, not a lot, but just a little bit, and it looks more like a purple rather than a shadow over pink. So that's why I'm using a light touch, just using the tip of my brush. And I also added, for some of those darker blue shadows, I took some of that black mixture that we made for the beak, and I just mixed in just like a tiny little bit just to gray it down, and that is giving me some of my deeper blue shadows. in this area over here on the left where the sun is not hitting the feathers as much, if at all. And I really have enjoyed painting this. Again, I encourage you, if you want to get the outline drawing and the supply list and all the goodies that come with this, then, consider joining my Patreon. It starts at $3 a month. It's a good value. You get a lot of stuff. So, anyway, just another mention of it in case you forgot. And now I just got this sort of peachy orangey color. I'm painting in his eyes. And then I am just making some texture marks, just using a little scumbling technique to do some texture right on the front part of his beak, right in front of his eye. And also just adding a little bit more of that same color just right around where the black meets the pink. And now I'm just going to take some of that white, Chinese white or white gouache, and just do some dots to break up some of this solid pink. He has more of a texture on his bill than I've painted at first, so I'm going ahead and lightening that up with just a little bit of that white gouache. Then I'm going to come in here with some of that really, really pale peach, pinky color, and put that at the top. And then some of the blue for some shadows. He has some dents and some bumps on his beak, and I just want to put the shadows in there for that. And just a shadow along the edge of his beak onto his feathers so that you can tell that his beak is casting a shadow onto his feathers that are behind his little beak. And now I'm just kind of fussing around, just adding some more, another layer of shadow here and there, wherever I feel like it needs it. When you get to this stage of your work, you want to start comparing each section to each other to make sure that you have the right darkness or lightness in that area. If it is too light, of course, go ahead and add another layer of color. And try not to go too dark too fast, because it's a lot harder to lighten the watercolor than it is to darken it. Now I'm just going to go ahead and do these letters. I've mixed up a blue and a green color to get sort of an aqua. I'm wetting each letter with just clean water, and then I'm taking that green blue, the blue green, to the bottom, and then I'm just taking my warm blue, the same one I used for my feathers, and I'm just going ahead and filling in the top part. And since it is wet and wet, and that was already wet, those two colors blend beautifully together. They make a beautiful transition from that really dark blue-green to the paler, warmer blue. And we're just going to do that on all the letters. We're just doing that clean wash of water. Add the darker at the bottom, the darker aqua green, and then the paler, warmer blue at the top, and let those two blend as they meet, and it makes a really beautiful lettering style, I think. Yes, very nice. I really like this technique. It gives it sort of an ombre, not really an ombre. It's not really enough transition for an ombre, but it does give that beautiful transition. And for some reason, it reminds me of summer. I love this coral combination with this beautiful sort of turquoise blue-green combination. I just love it. Love, love, love this color combination, and I hope you like it as well. Remember, you don't have to use this for June. You could use it for July. Just change, of course, the lettering to July or some other summer month. It doesn't have to be June. You could probably even use it for May, even though May is more spring. But yeah, I really like this. I'm just going to add a little more of a shadow down the front of his beak, and I think pretty much finished with it. I'm just going to add a little bit, another layer on these feathers here they look sort of like fish scales. They're overlapping, but I let that bottom first layer shine through around the edges, so it gives it more of that fish scale look almost, where the darker area is in the middle and it is outlined in a lighter area. So I am hoping that you have enjoyed this, and I hope you got something from it. And I do appreciate you watching. Please hit the thumbs up and give me a like or comment. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.